I remember days they used to laugh at me. Used to show them on my records talking casually. Used to say it was a passion on my path to be. Then they told me that I couldn't, so I had to be. Tell me what they really think about it now. Used to hate it, but I guarantee they're proud. Had to do it just to show them that I could, yeah. Now I finally think I took it where I should, yeah. Had a jokes on you and now you're on and laughing. I did a whole lot of winning. Look, it came from a passion. I see a whole lot of knowings I could see now in public. And that may think a lot of things, man. At least think something, now you the judge. And now tell me where you ended up, yeah. Look, I bet it was a simple job, yeah. Look, I went and took a different route, yeah. Look, that's why my life is different now. Back in my feelings, look, when I wasn't so gifted and I was learning to do this, and all I heard were the critics, and I don't blame you for that shit. Look, I was way out the basis, but I just needed some talent so I could wait this to greatness, oh yeah. You ain't ever think this, no, no, no. Stop me while I started, homie, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now this shit settled, it's go better and better, but I'll always remember, yeah, yeah.
Dr. Kelly, welcome to That One. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Mike. So happy to be here.
Yeah, and I had to take this trip out to San Diego because I had some friends of mine that live out here, and I didn't want to do virtual with them, and I didn't want them to fly to me. Maybe one day I'll have people fly to me, but I wanted to come out and make it as convenient as possible for people. So thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm happy. It wasn't a bad drive down from Orange County.
Good to hear. So let's get right into it. You're a functional medicine doctor. Can you kind of tell us about yourself and like what your focus is right now?
So my specialty is complex chronic illness. I see the sickest of the sick, usually folks who have seen 24 other doctors. But my passion and what I really have expertise in is how to prevent complex chronic illness, right? Yeah. So what is it that we can do if we're relatively healthy and want to stay healthy?
Yeah. So do you focus on getting putting the fire out right now and then go into the core, or do you go right to the core issue?
I always have to do two things, right? Yeah. People have symptoms most often. It's very rare that somebody will come in and say, absolutely nothing's wrong, right? Yeah. I sleep great, I eat great, poop great, no problems. Yeah. That's very unusual. Many times people have little things. They don't even have to be big things, but those give me a clue as to where we need to go to look for the root cause. And if you do have more stuff going on in terms of symptoms, I'm addressing those things too.
Yeah, okay. And did you always want to be a doctor when you were a kid?
No. For a long time, I wanted to be an opera singer or a musician.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I studied music at Brown and would go up. I even took classes at the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. I sang with an opera singer there. I sang in a local Lake George Opera Festival. This was really what I thought I wanted to do. And then by the end of my junior year in college, I thought, no, I don't love it enough. It is not enough of my heart. Yeah. So
wait a minute, you were a junior in college when you decided?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I get to the end of my college career and I don't know what to do. I have a BA in music, from a great school, but no idea what to do. And so my mom suggested I get a library science degree because she's like, well, at least you can get a job as a librarian because you can't get a job as a teacher. Right. You don't have any real credentials. And I didn't want to teach kindergarten. So I got a master's in library science. And I thought, okay, well, I don't really love this either, but I do love the mind and the brain and how it works. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go to medical school because hopefully I don't have to do that much more undergrad. So that's what I did.
And were you good in school?
I was pretty good in school.
Yeah, so you felt confident that you'd be all right with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. As a kid, were you singing all the time?
Yes.
Just not going to train to sing, but around the house and all that?
I like to sing a lot. In fact, one of my nicknames when I was very little was Kelly Bird.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah, which is my email, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's where that came from?
Yeah.
So my daughter loves to sing, and a lot of people don't know this about me, and my kids don't believe me, but I was in the all-county chorus.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was an athlete too, but I always liked music and instrument and singing and all that. So yeah, I made all-county chorus, and now you wouldn't be able to tell if I was starting to sing, but I sing with my daughter all the time with like country music and all that, and she's like, "Dad, please stop."
Oh, well, she got it from somewhere,
But she's
right?
singing all the time, yeah. So, no, I love that. I love to hear the story of how people like where they came from and how they got to doing what they're doing. So, all right. So then you go into medical, and you had to pick some type of medical to study, right? So
Yes.
you said something about the mind and things.
Well, I thought I was interested in the mind and how we organized information, but that was just an excuse. I was thinking about a PhD in neuroscience. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. So I went to medical school, and I always knew that I wanted to do more holistic medicine. I had been participating with an organization that did meditation, and the teacher was an acupuncturist. And so I really looked up to him. And I wanted to go to acupuncture school, actually.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, oh, well, why don't you apply for medical school? And if you don't get in, you can go to acupuncture school. Gosh darn it, I got into 4 medical schools. So thus I ended my acupuncture career as I thought. But, you know, in retrospect, it made a lot more sense for me to become a medical doctor. So I went to Tulane in New Orleans, which is like the most awesome place to go to school, right?
Yeah. Did you party?
As much as you can in medical school, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But it's a place right there that can get you off track for sure.
Yeah, I definitely didn't get off track, but we had a good time. Just so much great music, so much great food. It was really awesome to be there. In fact, I am going there next weekend for my 25th medical school reunion.
Time flies, doesn't it?
Is that possible?
I just thought about that as you said that. I graduated high school in 95. So that's, I don't even want to say it, 30 years?
Yeah.
I still feel like a kid. Do you ever feel like that? Like you still,
yes.
I still feel like I'm in my 20s a lot of times.
Yeah, sometimes.
So traditional medicine, like you obviously had a mentor that kind of guided you. Was that mentor telling you like traditional medicine is?
No, this was really all self-directed.
Okay.
So I went to medical school. It was hard. I did not enjoy parts of medical school. I remember my boyfriend, after my first year, he said to me, "Cal, I didn't even know if you were going to come back for the second year because you were so miserable the first year." But I did. I persevered. You know, I committed, paid a lot of money. I was going to get this thing done. But I was always looking for ways that I could step outside of the conventional medical model. So this was when the mind-body connection was being talked about. People like Herbert Benson put on a bunch of symposiums. There was another acupuncturist who I spent some time with studying. I did healing touch, which is a form of energy work, and massage.
Really?
So I was trying to do all these other things because I was much more interested in the other things.
Yeah, yeah. But did it bother you that you had to study the traditional stuff, or did you think of it as, wait a minute, this will give me context and contrast from what I really want to get into?
I think it was a little bit of both, right? Memorizing pharmaceutical drugs was not a good time, but recognizing that I had to understand these things in order to be able to do what I really wanted to do, which was really help people at a much deeper level than I was going to be able to do with pharmaceuticals and surgery. And so that was how I approached medical school as much as I could. And then the same thing with residency. So then I went on and did 4 years of residency training in what's called internal medicine, which is doctors for adults, and pediatrics, which is, you know, being a pediatrician. And that was a really long 4 years also.
Yeah.
Now,
people don't realize residency is a long time. Like you got medical school, and then you have residency after that. There's a lot of time invested.
So much time invested.
Before you can actually go out and practice.
Exactly.
Which is a good thing in a way.
Yes.
But it's a long time.
It is a long time, very long time. You know, medical school is gaining all the book knowledge that you need, and then residency is learning how to put it into practice. And I went to Ghana, West Africa, as part of my medical school training for 2 months, which was really awesome. And I've got tons of stories on that. But what I realized as we were sitting in clinics taking care of these these patients that would show up in the villages. So every day we would set up a clinic in a different village. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. Thank God I'm going to residency because if I have to be a doctor now after medical school, I don't know anything.
Well, did you know things and you were just, having that perspective of, or, the perception of not knowing it was imposter syndrome, or did you really not know?
No, I mean, I think it was a little bit of both. Like, there's a big difference between knowing how the heart and the blood pumps through the heart and what kind of antibiotic I'm going to give this person. So it just really showed the juxtaposition of book knowledge versus practice.
Right. Yeah, the practical part. That's where the residency comes in then.
Exactly.
So talk about Ghana, though. I want to know, what was was there a culture shock when you got there?
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And this was in the late let's see, this was 1990, actually. No, that's not right. Sorry, scratch that. 99.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I'm not that old.
Yeah.
This was 99. And, we didn't have cell phones then. So
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy to think that we didn't have cell phones. But yeah, I remember having to call my boyfriend on a payphone.
Using one of those cards?
Using one of those cards.
Prepaid cards.
And the internet was pretty much dial-up in Africa at that time. Mm-hmm. So my friends and I would pick a restaurant that we wanted to go to after clinic was done in the morning, take a bus or whatever, walk to the clinic, and then we'd also go to like an internet cafe and hang out and do internet stuff and go to a restaurant. Yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, that's wild. And what was your favorite part about Ghana?
Actually, the people. The people were so warm, so welcoming, very friendly. The Ghanaian medical students were just wonderful hosts and hostess, and really helped try to show my friends and I their culture. And it was just a really neat place.
Now, this might not be asked of you, but what was it like coming back after being there?
I stopped in the Netherlands on my way back, and this was in May now. So all the tulips were blooming. If you've never been to Holland or the Netherlands in May, it's spectacularly beautiful, just fields and fields and fields and fields of color. Yeah. So that helped a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I recognized, I lived out of a backpack for 3 months, and you definitely get a different perspective on how much stuff you really need.
Yeah, I can imagine. So many people complain about things here, and then they have no idea. And of course, us parents will say to our kids, there's starving kids in Africa. Like, that's a line that my parents use all the time. But we don't. It's not just the kids; it's all of us. Like, we complain about stupid things until you go and experience something like that. How about chronic illness? When did that really become something that you paid attention to or knew about? Because it seems like a buzz phrase.
It's a buzzword now, but that's not where I started. I started an integrative medicine practice.
What is integrative medicine?
So the difference between functional and integrative is really understanding a variety of different kinds of modalities. So I might send somebody to an acupuncturist because I understand what conditions are going to benefit from acupuncture. I understand what conditions might benefit from talking to a nutritionist. I think that there's a broader base of a variety of different things that you can do with integrative medicine. Functional medicine is really about doing specific kinds of tests to understand root causes. So my original training after residency was in integrative medicine. I spent 2 years in Tucson with Dr. Andrew Weil, who's the father of integrative medicine, right?
Yeah.
The guy with the beard.
Wait a minute, how did that come about?
I applied.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was so grateful to be done with residency. I got a job in Oregon, primary care job, seeing patients in the clinic, responsible for patients in the hospital. I was in a family practice group, and I was lonely and not really feeling fulfilled. And my office was moldy, and I was starting to get sick and fatigued, but I didn't know what was happening.
Oh man.
And I thought, okay, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this.
Do you remember the smell when you think about it right now?
Oh yeah,
Isn't that funny how we can go back to and things stick with us?
absolutely.
Yeah, because I can think about, you mentioned mold. I remember living in a house when I was a kid and having a smell, especially in the basement.
Oh yeah, those basements.
And you can go back and remember that, and it's just wild how that, yeah. So there was mold there, and you were sick and fatigued. And
Yeah, I was starting to get
Yeah.
depressed, and I knew I needed out. And I knew I wanted to do more holistic kinds of medicine. So I applied to the University of Arizona's program. This was the last year that they actually hosted a residential class. So I was one of 35 people in the world who has done the residential fellowship, where we got to, live and hang out with Andy Weil and cook him dinner and, do all sorts of things in person, work in the clinic there. And that was by far one of my favorite times, was living in Tucson and learning about integrative medicine, being in school, learning about things that I finally wanted to learn about, right?
Yeah.
Now somebody was actually teaching me. So I learned about environmental medicine and environmental toxins, which have since become huge. I started learning about them there.
what was he like?
He is the most amazing person. He can tell a story verbatim. Multiple times I've heard him tell stories, and it's just like his brain is perfect in memorizing exactly what he wants to say. He's got a big heart too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he know he was that guy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
he did, but
yeah.
it wasn't like I'm better than you.
Right. But he carried himself like he was confident. He knew his thing.
He was
and-
very
yeah,
confident. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you learn from him, being the leader in that space, that you could take away into your career?
I mean, at this point, he had mostly stepped back from the fellowship. So it was him, and then there were other people, Tirana Low Dog, Victoria Mazes, who were running the program more on a day-to-day basis. And so we had a variety of different things that we would do. I learned, medical hypnosis. I learned herbals with Tirana Low Dog. I learned osteopathic manipulation. I learned from Andy Weil. I remember one time we had a melatonin researcher come, and so he was telling us about melatonin, and we're all hanging out, just chatting,
Geeking out.
geeking
right?
out. Yeah, I mean that's what medical doctors do. They love to geek out about medicine stuff.
Yeah, you can see some people geeking out about baseball cards, and you can also about melatonin. Whatever works. Now, as you were going through all this, have you ever looked back? Because I do this myself on, the things I'm into, and I didn't know why I was going through those things at the time, but it's all starting to make sense now as you've gotten older.
Yeah. Yes, I've always had this drive and this passion to help other people and to do it in a deep, profound way. And so when I got into my own practice, which was in 2008, I opened my own practice in Southern California. I did regular functional medicine, and I always had that heart for people who hadn't really figured out what was happening to them.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to figure out how to help them. So then I went on and learned more functional medicine with the Institute of Functional Medicine, and then did a fellowship in environmental medicine. Then I learned about mold.
Sorry to interrupt you. What is a fellowship? I've heard of it before, but what is it specifically?
So that's what we call specific training after you've done residency.
Okay.
So like if you want to become a cardiothoracic surgeon, you do a residency in general surgery,
Okay.
and then you do a fellowship in cardiothoracic.
Which is more specific.
Which is more specific.
Targeted. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's not always a recognized fellowship, like a cardiothoracic surgeon or even a cardiologist or gastroenterologist, but we call it a fellowship.
And do you get something to add to your letters behind your name when you go to the fellowships, or not really? Or is it a certificate that you get, or how?
Sometimes. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious. I don't know. All right. And then as you're going through doing, you have your practice, when did you start to realize the importance of building a brand, a personal brand?
Well, I mean, when you own your own practice, you have to develop collateral and marketing and things like that. So I wanted to tap into this idea about spring, meaning this is a time of rebirth and renewal. We can, this can be a jump off point for helping or improving your health. So there's a lot of connotations with spring. So that's where I came up with the name of my clinic, the Spring Center. Yeah. I think in terms of personal brand, that came a lot later.
Yeah. Like how recent?
In 2002, or maybe 2021, during COVID, I pitched a company called Health Means on doing a virtual summit. Virtual summits had been going on for 5-6 years at that point, but nobody had done a summit on a condition called mast cell activation syndrome. And it's a mouthful.
Mast,
M-A-S-T.
M-A-S-T. Okay, mast.
M-A-S-T.
Yeah.
Mast cell activation syndrome.
What is that?
It is a hypersensitivity reaction to things that we should normally tolerate, like people can. Well, let me back up. Let me talk about what mast cells are.
Yeah.
So mast cells are part of our immune system, and they're an ancient part of our immune system. They're born in the bone marrow, and then they move to the areas in the periphery, basically between ourselves and the outside world. Mm-hmm. So they're on our skin, they're in our sinuses, respiratory tract, gastrointestinal tract, and their job is to seek out and sound the alarm when there are foreign invaders. Okay.
They're called mast cells.
Mast cells. Right.
Yep.
And everybody has them. They've been around for, a long, long time in all mammals. But when those mast cells get triggered in a certain genetic susceptible person, they start to become hypervigilant. All the mast cells are filled with all these chemical messengers. We heard a lot about cytokine storm during COVID. Do you remember that phrase? Cytokines are inflammatory mediators or chemicals, many of which are in the mast cells.
Okay.
So what was happening was COVID was triggering these people's mast cells to produce all these cytokines, and then bam, they're super sick. Inflammation, right? And inflammation in acute setting is what the body is supposed to do to try and fight those foreign invaders. But what happens is, in some people, in fact, 20% of the population have mast cell activation or are at risk for mast cell activation because of their genetic predispositions.
Oh, that many people?
And it's common.
And COVID triggered that, and then that's where we were seeing a lot of, obviously, in the lungs, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in 22, I pitched that I wanted to do a summit on this condition.
Okay.
And so I hosted the first summit in the world on mast cell activation. And it was one of their most successful summits.
Really? Now, who was the people that are attending? Doctors?
No, mostly patients.
Okay.
So I would say probably 25% of them were healthcare providers.
Okay.
When everything was said and done, and there were 45,000 people who signed up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many of those summits? 45,000 for one summit?
For my summit in 22.
How was it marketed?
The company markets it. Some of the people who were my guests marketed it to their list. I didn't really have much of a list, but I marketed it to the people that I could.
Yeah.
And it blew up.
Wow. And people didn't even know what mast cell was.
No.
So what do you think caught their attention? That 45,000 people signed up.
oftentimes, when you are sick and you don't know why, you are on a search. You're on a search to try and figure that out.
Yeah.
And the challenge with mast cells is that everybody's presentation is different. Everybody's mast cells are different. The mast cells that are in your mouth are different from the mast cells that are lower down or that are in your sinuses.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means that the composition of chemical inflammatory mediators that are released are different.
Yeah.
So one person can have hives and gastrointestinal issues and depression, and another person can have joint pain and palpitations and brain fog.
Right.
And oftentimes people have very long laundry lists of symptoms.
Okay.
So
you're doing this to educate people.
Yes.
Right. And was it also because there's so many different presentations of it, like what was the end game of the webinar or the summit? Was it to tell people how to recognize it and then what to do about it, or just how to recognize it? Like, what was
a little bit of both, right? Because what was happening was I was seeing patients who had been mold exposed. I was seeing patients who had had Lyme disease. I was seeing patients who had been exposed to environmental toxins, and they were getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And we would try and get them better, treat them for their Lyme disease, treat them for their environmental toxins, and detox them. We couldn't do it, right? They were reacting to the supplements, to the herbs. They were starting to react to their own foods.
Oh, wow.
I mean, some of these patients can eat like a couple of foods, blueberries, turkey, a chicken. That's it.
Yeah.
And when people get to that point where their lives become so small, they spend most of their time trying to figure out how to get themselves better.
Yeah. And so how do they get themselves better?
It's different for every person.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's different for every person. Luckily, there are medications, there are supplements, there are things that we can do to help block the mast cells from releasing all their cytokines and calm them down. And then we have to figure out what's the root cause, right?
The mold.
Is it mold? Yeah. Is it an infection? Is it an environmental?
What about allergies?
So allergies are on a spectrum, right? Your mast cells in your nose are reacting to things in the environment.
Yeah. So peanut allergy. Let's talk about peanut allergy for a second.
Sure.
So my daughter's 12, and when she was younger, crawling around on the floor, my wife left the peanut butter and jelly plate on the floor, and she was probably running around doing what moms do. And my daughter crawled over and it got on her face and she got hives. And so that's when we realized, we have something here. And so we got her tested, and she's never went into anaphylactic, have EpiPens and all that. So that has to do with overactive mast cells?
Well, yes, and it might just be that.
Yeah.
But what happens is it's a total load. So if we think about the body as a sink, some people have really big sinks, right? And they've got ginormous drains. You can party like a rock star and smoke.
It just flows through.
It just flows through and you're fine. And you drop dead happily at, 100. Some people have really shallow sinks and very narrow drains. They can't live like that.
Yeah.
Right? So when you put too many things in your sink, the sink overflows, you're going to have symptoms. And the other way to think about this is like, well, you can have two buckets. One bucket, there's a little drip going in, right? Yeah. The other bucket, there's a hose. The person with the hose is definitely going to get sicker faster. The person with the dripping is eventually going to get sick. They might not be sick yet, but they're going to reach that threshold where their bucket overflows.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that so many people are so much more sick these days is because we have a shit ton of environmental toxins and they're poisoning us.
Mm-hmm.
It's in our food. It's in our water. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And when moms have full buckets and they get pregnant, babies are born with more environmental chemicals.
That's why we see more peanut allergies. Because I don't remember that as a kid.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense now.
That's why there's more peanut allergies.
Yeah.
That's why there's more autism. That's why there's more ADHD. That's why there's more dementia. That's why there's more cancer.
Yeah.
That's why there's more obesity.
What about vaccines and the link with that and autism? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I definitely think it's part of the total load, right?
So that makes sense. It's not just one thing.
It's not just one thing.
Yeah.
Do I think it's a big, like, that's probably the hose, right? As opposed to a drop.
Yeah, okay.
Going in your
That
bucket.
makes sense. I like how you portrayed that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
because we hear it sometimes and somebody's just so on the vaccines and they're causing this, we got to stop it. But they're not thinking of the bigger picture and the sinks and the buckets and the hoses and the drips. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, you did a great job with that. I like it.
Thanks. Thank you. I went to this conference. It was an autism conference by a doctor named Amy Yasko. And her thing was a process called methylation. Have you ever heard of methylation?
I've heard methylene blue, but that's not methylation.
It's
But anyway,
a little different.
Yeah.
So it's a metabolic process. Basically, a methyl group is a carbon and 3 hydrogen, which means if you stick a methyl group on something, it changes things. So if you methylate DNA or you methylate a protein, it changes things.
Okay.
The process of methylation happens 1 billion times a second in every cell in the body. It's kind of important.
Yeah.
And then there are a variety of different genes that are involved in the process of methylation. One very famous gene is called the MTHFR gene, which
I'm
many
not going to be
people
quizzed after this, am I?
no,
Okay, good.
no. But
We're
many
recording, so that's
many
good.
people know about this gene, right? And so this Dr. Yasko was doing presentations, and I'm just there as a participant to learn. And there was a panel of a bunch of moms, and so the moms would throw up the different genes in the methylation pathway. So it was like 20, 25 different genes. And so they would put up on the screen for everyone in the audience to see, these are Johnny's genes.
Yeah.
And then the mom would explain some of the symptoms and how Dr. Yasko's supplements to address the methylation defects helped. I had worse genes than every single child that was presented that day. And these were kids who didn't speak, headbanging. What's going on?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
My mom was exposed to less environmental chemicals than these moms had when she was pregnant with me.
Yeah.
I was born in the late 60s.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So there weren't that many environmental chemicals around.
Yeah. What about drug use back in the 60s, though? How did that affect things? Because obviously those are contaminants.
Those are contaminants, but, well, my mom didn't do drugs. She was a teetotaler. So
Yeah, but I mean, in the 60s,
who knows?
Yeah.
But I think overall, the total load, it's still about the total load. We didn't have that many pesticides in use. We didn't, I mean, they were just starting to use some of these chemicals. Now we live in our plastic bubbles. We eat out of plastic. We drink out of plastic. Plastic is everywhere. Our commercially grown food is doused in pesticides. Even if it's, all of our grains are sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent to harvest them, not even to get rid of bugs, but to just dry it out so that it doesn't cause damage to the machinery that's harvesting it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
How many environmental chemicals we're exposed to now.
You know what I noticed when I started eating more whole foods and getting away from some of that stuff, or a lot of that stuff, I'm obviously I'm 48 man, your belly's harder to get rid of fat and all that. But I noticed it wasn't necessarily fat was disappearing. It was inflammation, I think.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize that. They think they're a little chubbier or something. It could be inflammation.
Yes.
And inflammation goes away and all of a sudden you see your abs.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's another important thing. It's not just fat loss, which is important, visceral fat and all that, but it's also the inflammation is so important. Inflammation causes so many problems.
So many problems.
Yeah.
Inflammation is one of the drivers of all chronic disease. So then you have to ask the question, what's driving the inflammation?
Yeah.
Environmental chemicals. in many cases, in my patients, mold
Yep.
and chronic infections. You know, Lyme disease is everywhere. You're from back east. I'm from back east. My mom has Lyme. I've had Lyme. My husband has Lyme. My 3 stepdaughters have Lyme. My sister, you know, like everybody's been exposed. And in some people, their immune systems can keep it at bay, right? So really simply, here's your immune system. Here's your here's the infections. You're going to be fine. Your immune system is going to keep it in check, right? It's like why everyone who had chickenpox isn't walking around with shingles.
Yep.
Some people never even get shingles because the immune system is robust enough to keep it in check. But if you say you have a really stressful job, or you get in a car accident, or you have surgery, or you get a divorce, now your immune system cannot keep up and you're going to get sick.
Yeah. You know, a really wise man told me, he wasn't a doctor, but he told me one time, all sickness is caused by a suppression, whether it's a person in your environment or an event, something happens. Every time, sickness is caused by some kind of suppressive factor, which it might be causes stress or whatever. So is that true? Like, would it be possible if you didn't have any suppressive toxins in your area and all that, like you could just be a healthy person no matter what genes you have?
I think I would probably say it might be simplistic, but not quite that simplistic, right? Because what if you don't have enough of something? Usually you get sick because you have too much of bad things and not enough good things, right? So if you don't have enough nutrients because our soil is depleted or you're eating crap
Right.
and you have too many toxins, you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
But you're going to get sick with either one. So,
Well, but wait a minute. So, but that immune system, if your immune system's up here, you can overcome that. But
to a point.
But what pulls that immune system down is those suppressive factors. That's what I was referring to.
Right. And you also need nutrients to support the immune system, right?
Because that would bring the immune system down too.
Because that would bring it down too.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough zinc, you're going to have a problem.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. I want to move to, with the time we have left, talking about how things have become more mainstream about making America healthy again. Politics to the side. Talking about everybody, we need to do something about this, right?
Yeah.
So as you were watching all this go on, again, all the other stuff put to the side because I don't want to talk about that stuff, but the health part, what were you thinking as you were watching this start become mainstream? Were you getting excited?
Absolutely. Thank God, right?
Yeah.
And everything that we're talking about is vitally important for the health of America, for the health of the planet, actually, right? If we let big ag and big pharma and big business run the things the way that they want to, we will be sick and on pharmaceuticals and addicted to fake sugars, and we will never get our health back. But if RFK is able to go in and make some real changes to our food system and hopefully our healthcare system in a way that is positive, that promotes prevention, that supports healthy choices. You know, it's really interesting, Mike. When COVID first happened and I started watching the news, because they would always, show the news. It was so drastic about people who died.
Yeah.
And more often than not, especially when they were young people, they were overweight. They were, if not morbidly obese. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is an amazing opportunity for America to get healthy again, right?
What do they call them? Premorbidities?
Yeah.
Is that what they call them?
Premorbidities or comorbidities, right?
Yeah.
And it was if you were overweight, if you had diabetes. What is
Smoking,
diabetes?
drinking too much,
right.
all these things.
All these things. They're inflammatory conditions.
Yeah.
Throw a match on a smoldering ember, you're going to get a raging fire. And that's exactly what happened. And unfortunately, what we did was not say, hey, America, get healthy again.
Mm-hmm.
We could have really used that as a turning point for people to say, okay, well, yeah, you're confined to your homes, but exercise.
Yeah.
Let's eat healthy. Let's do these things that are going to reduce our comorbidities.
Yeah.
now hopefully we have an opportunity to really make that change.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think so? What I didn't understand, I was talking to Dr. Jeffrey Gladden. I don't know if you're familiar with him, and I said, don't you think that eventually Big Pharma would understand that if they focus on life extension, that they would have longer relationships with clients and customers? Because Big Pharma, Big Food, Big Ag, all that, eventually they're going to run out of customers. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like that they would understand, hey, there's a big shift happening here. Let's shift our focus and all our research. Let's talk about Big Pharma for a second. Let's do it all on preventative and see and make a shift in our business and pivot. Like a lot of people had to do it during COVID. They had to pivot. Big Pharma should do that, because then they're going to have people living longer, whatever business that they move into or however they do it. It seems to me like the right move. But do you think that we'll ever see that?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
And they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep this from happening?
Probably, right?
Yeah.
When I don't know. I mean, I don't really watch TV anymore, but when I do watch TV, it's filled with pharmaceutical ads.
Oh, yeah.
So many ads. And because I don't prescribe a lot of pharmaceuticals, I don't really pay attention.
Yeah. Do you feel pressure to prescribe?
No.
No. I don't even
No.
know if you felt that or anything.
No.
And do you get pushback from your messaging when you're pushing stuff out on social or anything? Do you ever get pushback?
No.
No. Okay, that's good.
No. I mean, I run my own practice. There's nobody breathing down my neck to tell me that I have to do certain things a certain way. And I am so grateful, beyond grateful, that I had the opportunity to open my own practice so I can do it the way that I want.
Yeah.
But I don't even know the names of these drugs or the action of many of these newer pharmaceuticals. And it's just mind-blowing. I think it's highly unlikely that they are going to get off that trajectory. And if Big Ag keeps up their end of the bargain and poisoning us, they won't have to.
Right. They're working together. It's a symbiotic relationship.
It's a very symbiotic relationship. And it's really difficult to make healthy choices. You know, people don't like to be put out. When I tell most of my patients eat a gluten-free diet, more of them than not also eat a dairy-free diet, because those things
Inflammatory.
they're very inflammatory.
Yeah. So if we think about, hey, what can I do to stay out of being an inflammatory condition? That's a great starting point, really, right? What can I do to?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the one thing you have the most control over is what do you put in your body? So your food, is it organic? Is it at least, the dirty dozen organic?
Yeah.
Do you know what the dirty dozen is?
No.
So there's a organization called the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, and they put out a lot of information, including they look at every year what are the fruits and vegetables that are the most contaminated if they're conventionally grown.
Oh, okay.
So it will tell you, okay, if I'm going to go buy berries at the store, I'm going to buy the organic berries and pay the extra money because the conventionally grown berries are just chock full of pesticides.
Right, and it kills the nutritional benefit. Like it's just yeah.
So paying attention to what you're putting in your body in terms of food and making healthy food choices. And you don't have to be like militant, but if you give it 80%, that's going to go a long way. Yeah. Remember what I said about the grains. We put glyphosate on grains. So grains are not safe unless they're organic.
And what does glyphosate do to you?
So glyphosate can contribute to leaky gut. It's actually very similar to an amino acid called glycine. It will substitute itself into your proteins and your physical structure because it will replace the glycine in your proteins. That's a scary thought, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, "Oh, I just use Roundup on my, sidewalk because I don't want the weeds." What we learned from some of the glyphosate researchers is that it's actually the inert, inactive ingredients in Roundup that are like 1,000 times more toxic than the glyphosate itself. Other things that glyphosate can do, it's a carcinogen.
Yeah.
So that when they would feed it to the rats would all get cancer.
Yeah.
It's a very toxic substance.
Wow. Well, a lot to think about here. We're up against the clock, so I want to talk about your vision from here and what you're focused on going forward and what would have to happen that when it happens, it lights you up.
Okay. So as you can see, I love talking about environmental toxins because I think it's important and everybody is impacted. The other thing that I really like to talk about is even though we're all impacted by environmental chemicals, there is a way of being and a mindset that can either support somebody's health or potentially keep them stuck in a sick state or a victim state.
Yeah.
And this doesn't get enough conversation because most people think, I have symptoms, I have something wrong with my physical body, I'm going to go to a medical doctor. I have something wrong with my brain, I'm depressed, I'm going to go talk to a therapist. Or if they're severely depressed, they think they have a chemical imbalance, they're going to go talk to a psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
If they have
drugs,
right,
yeah.
If they have a spiritual crisis, they're going to go talk to their minister or their pastor or their rabbi or some guru. We can't separate all of those pieces of ourselves as human beings. We try, but I think where functional medicine is heading next is to open the conversation to this idea that what we think, what we believe about ourselves, what we talk to ourselves about, our attitudes, our spirit, those things are what really bring true health.
Yeah, I love that. That's right up my alley. I don't know if you saw me light up.
Yes, I did.
Here's the thing. When you have a clear intention, the way you think leads to your intentions. When you have a clear intention, it directs your attention.
Yes.
And we only have so many attention units to spend. Right in this room right now, there's probably trillions of things you could pay attention to, but we don't have enough attention units to spend on everything. So we have them on certain things. And what's directing that? And if we don't set the intention like you're talking about, then that intention comes from someone else. The television, the news, social media, what have you, right?
Yeah, your husband, your wife, your kids.
Then you're paying attention to someone else's. And by the way, there's an intention of certain powers like Big Pharma, Big Ag, to keep your attention on the wrong things to serve them. And that leads to bad things. It leads to, obviously, unhealthy states. It leads to resentment if you're being directed by someone outside of yourself. So I love this. This is probably one of the best things I've heard on a podcast, Dr. Kelly, because it's so true. And, a lot of doctors don't talk about this.
Because they don't get training in that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I got a master's in spiritual psychology.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so that's spirituality and science is not two separate buckets.
No.
Yeah, I agree.
No, it's the same thing.
I'm not even a doctor, guys. I figured that out earlier.
Well, it's what lights you up, right?
Yeah.
What is your mission? What is your purpose here on the planet? What is your authentic, true self? And are you listening to it? Are you living it?
Yep.
When we make choices that we suppress it or we say, not now, or I'm not good enough, or that, I can't do that. When we push ourselves down, and as women do this a lot, right? But men do it too in different ways. If you were taught as a kid that you shouldn't cry, and you're kind of an emotional person, you do a lot of suppressing. Guess what that happens? That ends up as cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because pressure builds up. Like as an imagery.
Yeah.
Pressure builds up and you're going to be forced to confront something at some point anyway.
Hopefully.
The earlier you do it, the better. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Earlier, better.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I see this link between the thoughts that we have, the emotions that we have, and the symptoms that show up in people and the conditions that show up in people. And so there's one last piece I think is really important to understand is that our bodies are not against us.
Yeah.
We have this idea that we have to fight cancer, that we have to fight autoimmune conditions, that we have to fight cardiovascular disease, right? We have to fight ourselves. We get mad at our bodies when they don't do what we want. Right?
It's huge, yeah.
And
then you get more of that.
And then you
fighting.
get more of that,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it's like a toddler saying, hey, mommy, daddy, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And what we're doing, rather than looking down at that child and saying, okay, honey, what do you need? We're saying, get out of my face, kid. I'm not going to listen to you.
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
And we're doing that to ourselves.
Yeah. So huge. Where can people go deeper with you, Dr. Kelly?
I have a brick and mortar practice in Southern California, in Costa Mesa, California. I have a couple of licenses in other parts of the country, so you can definitely see me as a patient if you want. I also am going to be putting out an online program for people who can't or don't want to become patients or just want to work with me as a coach. The program will probably launch in June, and I'm very excited about it. I'm building it now with my team. And you can also find me on social at Dr. Kelly McCann.
Go check her out because you're going to learn a lot, just more than this episode. And I want to support Dr. Kelly because I love her mission. And thank you so much for being here and driving down here and coming in to see your boy C-Roc. I appreciate that.
Hey, thank you.
You are that one, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, folks, whether you're watching, listening, I appreciate you being here. Dr. Kelly appreciates you. I'm sure I'll speak for her. And make sure you go subscribe right now on your favorite podcast platform. Do it now. Take the time out of the equation. Do it now to That One Podcast. We're going to continue to bring you amazing guests like Dr. Kelly. And we are in San Diego today. We're going to be going somewhere else next. And Kins will be back. Shout out to Kins. We miss you, bud. And until next time, be that one.